Hi, this is the B4 brunch, and I think this might be the first of the B4 brunches. And I'd like to welcome you to three guests that I've got with me today. So I'm Mel Norton. I'm a nurse by trade and a health visitor, and I've worked clinically in the NHS for 31 years and as a senior manager. And the last part of my service within the NHS was in children's mental health across Oxfordshire, where I met Matt, who is sat below me on here, so I'm pointing down to Matt. Matt, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Matt Gregor. I work in a primary school in Oxfordshire. I've been based there for 11 and a half years now, and my passion is for physical education and mental health. As Mel said, obviously that's where we met through the variety of activities we plan for children's health and wellbeing. I do believe there's a massive link between physical education and mental health. And obviously that's the whole part of coming on here, just to kind of air, it's a tough time with COVID going on, the discussion around children's mental health, as it is Children's Mental Health Week this week.
Brilliant, thanks Matt. And Sabina, do you want to say who you are and where you're from?
Yeah, hi, I'm Sabina and I'm from Be Free Young Carers. We're a Oxfordshire-based charity that looks after young carers aged between 8 and 18 years old. We provide respite activities, one-to-one emotional support. We have a bespoke befriending service, and we also offer first aid training for those young carers so that they can respond to the person they're caring for, which is usually a parent or sibling.
Brilliant, thanks Sabina. And as Matt said, it is Children's Mental Health Week, so we have got to focus on the discussion about where Sabina and Matt are coming from. But also we've got Paul Ballinger, and Paul and I have spoken earlier in the week about using coaching techniques to support adults in the workplace, with the view that supporting adults can support the family a bit further. So we'll discuss that in a short while. But Paul, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, good. Hello to everybody. Paul Ballinger, MD of STL Communications, based in Witney. I think the whole family unit is super important right now. And of course, the pressures have just been put on everybody because of homeschooling. And it's about being considerate for what everybody's trying to achieve through the day and through the week in very close proximity to each other. So,
brilliant. Thanks, Paul. So first of all, we wanted to talk to you, Matt, to understand a little bit more. If you tell us a bit more about what you do. You're based at Blaydon Primary School.
Yeah, based at Blaydon. And obviously my first career, well, I haven't really changed career, but my first main aspect was PE and coaching. So I worked there. And then 4 years ago, I lost my mum. And I kind of pretended to be the tough guy. And, it was just like, I'm fine, I can cope. And then all of a sudden, it kind of hit me like a rock. And I thought, nobody ever talks about this in a school environment, or, for me, my release was going to the gym and exercising. So I kind of, reached out to the local services around, which is obviously where I met you, and kind of discussed the various ideas and third-party sector charities that were kind of offering services to support children's mental health. And that's where I then did a triathlon to raise money for children's mental health, which is where I met Oxfordshire Youth, who then provided training for teachers in school. And then from there, it just kind of really kicked on, kind of developed a massive big passion for it. And I could really see how physical education and mental health could kind of interlink, and really help children. And for me, if they can get the support at such a young age, as Paul said earlier about it's tough for adults, but I think if children can understand at such a young age, it's okay to open up. Whether it's a small feeling, a big feeling, you're having a down day. Everyone has down days. It's just giving them, say, kind of the coping mechanisms to be able to understand of how they can support each other, and just even having that conversation. So for us, we then developed the mental health and wellbeing program, where everything we did, we kind of almost did with parents first. And we found a lot, I guess, of the anxiety and worries. We said, we're going to talk about mental health in school. And the amount of parents we had that said, you're going to use the word mental. But that's kind of the stigma that's evolved around mental health and well-being. I guess in the old days, it was you were put in a straitjacket and put away because you had a mental illness. But, if you're ill, you go to the doctors. So your mental health should, combine that. So for us, every training program we kind of set up, we wanted to embed it into the community. So we launched that, obviously, with the help of yourselves and Lewis, who's a great lead. We run projects for parents at school. So we brought parents in, and everything we did before we did with the children, we gave the parents the taster of what it was about. We spoke about anxiety, stress. We covered all the kind of big mental health topic areas. And parents then started to kind of warm and welcome into the topic. And then we kind of brought it into the school system, where PSHE lessons then became mental health lessons. We then brought in growth mindset, etc. And this kind of program just started to, really flow, and kids really brought into it. And, we now have children who can come up to me for a sports competition and say, we had one, way before COVID, where we were in the county finals, and a young girl lost her granddad, and she came up to me and she said, unfortunately, I can't play in the hockey tournament. My head's not in the right space. I lost my granddad, and I'm just, struggling with my feelings. But, for an 11-year-old girl to come up to her teacher and express that, kind of for me showed where we were at as a school, and how we kind of embedded the fact that it's okay to talk about feelings and emotions. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. And I don't know if you want to add a little bit more, Mel, because obviously you've seen it firsthand.
Yeah, no, I remember when I first came to see you, there were about 3 children in the school who you were particularly working with. And I think this perhaps is one of the areas where you'd really thought, actually, this is a real connection between sport and children's mental health and their well-being. And they were kids who were rather unsettled in the classroom and kept sort of trying to leg it, and were difficult as far as the other kids were concerned, or the teachers, because they required a lot of attention, but they couldn't really thrive in the classroom either. So they felt very poor self-esteem, perhaps. And then I remember you saying that you use sport outside on the playground, and they thrived within that environment and actually managed to feel successful.
Definitely, I find a lot of children, say with autism or things like that, a lot of, say, the children that struggle inside the classroom are generally my best athletic person. They're the people who, really struggle in class, say with maths, English, etc. But take them outside into a different environment, and they're, top of the class in PE, they're leading sessions, and you just kind of, it's almost like split personality. You just think you've got a voice outside, because I guess there's less pressure in PE. There's less grade. You've got to confine yourself to an answer of A, B, or C, or in maths, it's kind of, there is an answer, you have to get it. Whereas in PE, every child can develop. You might be able to throw a tennis ball 5 yards, and then next week be able to throw it 7 yards, but everyone in PE can develop differently, and everyone has a chance to speak and use their voice and communicate in different ways, whether it's being a team captain, collecting the cones, pumping up, everyone can have a responsibility or feel of, I guess, worthness, compared to, for children these days, if you're, say, have anxiety or things like that, if you're staring at a question and you can't get it, for some children, the ability to put the hand up, they can't do that. Yeah. So they're then, they're going deeper and deeper into their emotions and struggling with school. And that's when I guess they develop the hate for school or a certain subject, etc. And then, like you say, Paul, that's then where we go to the home life, and they struggle at home, and then mum can't, there's so much pressure with homeschooling right now, there's pressure before homeschooling, because do parents have the confidence, to do maths and English and etc. And then if the parent can't, support the child, then the child feels left out. So that just creates like that turmoil, etc. So again, for us as a school, we offer parenting classes where we get them in and we talk about the methods we use for maths and English, etc. So we're almost kind of giving the parents the basic skills to be able to teach it at home, to be able to kind of stop that turmoil and then develop the conversation so children can feel the help they need at home or school.
So a big part of that is then drawing them out into conversations within the family unit, and to be able to speak up at school if they want to say something. And I suppose the other element to it is feeling a level of success in something, or movement forwards, progression.
Yeah, definitely. I think the other thing is, as well, as we found as staff, we did Mental Health Week, which obviously CAM's a part of, and we kind of did a topic of stress, and everybody could write down a stress that really annoyed them or aggravated them. And the first time I did it, I asked the children in year 5, 6, I said, right, does anyone want to go first? And every child didn't want to speak. And then I said, okay, I'll go first. And I did my stresses, things that aggravate me and wind me up. And the amount of children then stood up and went, well, that's the same as me. Mm-hmm. But for us, I think we found as well, so many children look at teachers as adults. and the variation. But for me, I've always got the aspect of I'm just a child, just more experienced. You know, I'm older and wiser, but I'm still a child. You know, everybody, I think as adults, we lose the inability now to be able to act like a child, you know, to run and jump in puddles and go and play on the swings and just, you know, just even running around and kicking a football with your children. I think we now as adults, as Paul said before, there's so much stress about work life, home life, friends. You know, where do we as adults get the time to switch off and just almost have a bit of fun? You know, so for me, I try and express to the children that I'm just like you guys. You know, I even did a year 6 SAT test just to prove to children that I make mistakes, and I did make mistakes, you know, and they were happy with that. They were like, whoa, you actually got a question wrong. And I was like, yeah, because I'm not strong at maths or English, you know, but for me, the children just think that you're like almost a god because you're a teacher. You get everything right, you know, and they don't understand, you know. But for us now, we've created this ethos that we've kind of almost moved away from mental health, and now we're onto a growth mindset. So we talk about the Yeti monster, etc. Like, I can't do things yet. You know, we've got resilient diaries in school where children every single day, something they did well, something they need to improve on, and a little like kind of character that they kind of color in about their emotions and feelings, etc. And one thing that we learned from the CAM service was with Lewis, we did a thing called the Big Doodle. Yes. Where you play music and children get to express themselves, how they, you know, play a bit of music, and you might draw with the color blue because the song you don't like, it makes you feel down. But then some children might draw suns and moons, and I mean, the kids love it. You know, we do that at least like once a term just so the kids can express themselves.
Yeah, and I have to say, I've seen the creations. They're beautiful. Very nice designer wallpaper. But Matt, what you're saying there, I think leads beautifully into what Paul and I had been talking about, which is the context of modelling, expressing yourself at home, and modelling it's all right to fail, and showing that how do you pick yourself up after that and keep going forwards. And certainly one of the things that I'd thought about a lot when I was still working in CAMS was the pressure on children and young people, because people are so busy and so drawn in different directions at work. And we have got the lockdown now, as we all know. That's changed the dynamics a little bit, but that's brought other things into play in the home life for parents. Paul, do you want to say a little bit about where we started talking?
Yeah, I think from a work perspective, and the two aren't separated at all, but sadly, probably true that most adults prioritise work over family when they're working from home. And that used to be, going back 10 months, probably for 1 or 2 days a week, if you had one of those roles, and you worked from home to allow you to get certain things done because you needed peace and quiet. Yeah. That's certainly not where most households are right now. No. Peace and quiet is not 2 words you would associate with it. Yet we are probably, as adults, it's a bit like saying a friend of mine's got a problem. Let's be honest, we all prioritise work over most things. You know, we're all sat on calls late this evening. It's important that we get things done, but at the end of the day, you've got to proportion your time equally. And people must feel that for you to get the response that we're looking for, Rachel, which is, and I think, Matt, your couple of words were brilliant. You know, it's about acceptance. It's about communication. I think that one thing that you seem to have got through to your pupils is that feeling of value. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter, because we all hit that at different times. So from my perspective, I'm trying to deliver, dare I say, the same, and make sure the people that are working the hours that they're working under very difficult circumstances are accepted, they can communicate, and they do still have a feeling of value. And that's very different and difficult when you're at a disparate workforce, because you can't just get that, you're doing across the office. We're missing a piece of communication. So it's how do we compensate for that? And it's not normal what we're doing. We're not home working at all. This is terrifying to most people. You know, we're little islands trying to work as a team. There's not a course in the world that's taught us how to do this. No. So we're literally tiptoeing through. And again, another good point you made, Mize, when somebody isn't allowed or they don't feel they can do that, they regress. And it's my point with Mel is, how do I spot that regression and hit it before it regresses to make somebody feel like they can talk about it. And I can't do that. What's the reason?
Yeah.
And then explore that and get them to a, dare I say, a good place where they can feel they can still contribute. You don't have to be in an office to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about using coaching and coaching techniques.
Yeah, definitely.
To help families, to help your staff, but indirectly then to help families.
Yeah.
To be. There's a lovely expression that I love, and we've kind of said it already, but in a different way. Is to make people feel received.
Yeah.
And it's a word I never really used to think about, but I was taught it a few years ago on a coaching course, and they said, when did you last feel received? And as though somebody actually really took what you said and understood it. And apart from here, where I feel very received by you all, it's not often that we feel that, because everything's so busy, and that is multiplied by 100 in the work environment, because it's question, answer, get that next thing done, get the project done, get the result out, and then come back and start all over again. And the corridor conversations that I think you're alluding to, Paul, that used to actually be part of the backbone of making work, they've been taken out through working from home. And so the thought, correct me if I'm wrong, was that we would use a more caring and considered approach to return that sort of high challenge but high support work environment that researchers always told us is the best environment for us to try and function in. And so thinking then about how do you do that without sort of giving everyone therapy at work? How would you do that? And we talked a little bit about whether it's possible to have some basic training for managers in organisation and senior leaders, that they can then be taught how to inquire, how to listen to understand, how to clarify what the issues are within their staff and really understand them, and give space to objectively think about things rather than that quick demand of results. And that's something you're thinking about trialing in STL, isn't it, Paul?
It is. I mean, we are going to do something, that's for sure. And I think that would form a thread of it. Is it true that if you start that at work, maybe it should trickle through to home life? If you're starting something in home life, Matt, which is trickling in stream into family, hopefully the two should meet in the middle, and we're giving everybody the same chance. I don't believe that dare we call it now, coaching, what we're doing is any different, whichever end you start at. If we take it on the same premise and everybody's looking for that to be valued and to feel like they're contributing, then the purpose is the same. The way you get to there, as long as there's a conduit that feels similar and you're allowing acceptance and communication, then we should be in a pretty good place.
And hopefully what we inadvertently do for everyone around us is model good practice and model an open attitude, an attitude where you can say something and not think, oh gosh, that was a silly idea, I really shouldn't have said that, or that'll set me back in someone's eyes because I didn't know the answer, if I'm in school or if I'm in work, whichever environment. So hopefully people can blossom and grow and be curious. And there's another lovely expression, which I know I shared with you, Paul, but for me, coaching, the reason I love it so much is because it helps people find there is yet unknown potential. And so it shines light on their skill sets so that they can have the confidence to step forward, try things, and then find a whole new opportunity in front of them, which then might bring more light and more resource into the workplace or the home.
Completely.
Oh, off topic, have you do you do like team events where you do at work, like take the afternoon off and do team building activities, or like when you do break time, do you have like little activities that they can do, or even like a workout, etc.? Or do you have?
We've done quizzes. We've done quizzes through the week. We've done quizzes on a weekend. They all tend to be this based or WhatsApp based, so that we're using the medium that's available and is obviously of safe practice now. We would historically do team events. We would go away to venues, and we'd do half a day sessions and get people from other departments to mix up, just like you would in any, or you should in any organisation. get that, I suppose, mutual respect to work across business units and departments. I'm a big fan of getting everybody together. I think I don't think there's any negatives.
And thinking of getting everyone together, that seamlessly links us in to Sabina, who's very, very quietly been sat there listening to us all. I don't know how relevant you think the conversations have been to what you want to talk about with your charity, but
it's really interesting hearing from Matt about sport and the connection with mental health. A lot of our respite events and activities that we do for young carers, because of the lockdown restrictions, are having to be outside, and they are all involving sport at the moment. And it's something that anyone can do. Go to your local park, and it's really important for our young carers to manage their mental health, because we have just seen increase numbers of mental health issues within our young carer community. They're really struggling at the moment. Just before Christmas, we managed to send Wellbeing boxes out to each of our young carers, which was really well timed. It came with a calendar of wellbeing activities they can do. So one day they can go for a walk, or they can call a friend, just trying to keep that connection, and try and get outside as well. Being outside is really good for their mental health as well. But sadly, the pandemic has had a really dire effect on our young carers' mental health, and I'm hoping, schools going back, hopefully in March time, that's going to get better. But I think with everything that's been going on, we are going to see huge rises in mental health issues amongst young carers and on children as generally. So it's something that we're really aware of, and we're trying to do as much as we can within government restrictions to manage the mental health issues of children.
And traditionally, in my experience from working in children's mental health and well-being, young carers are a group that are very unseen, and that was before we had lockdown. So even when they're going out and into school every day, they're kind of there functioning away, usually to some extent, but a lot of people won't even know that they're caring for a relative or a family member.
And a lot of young carers don't realise they're young carers either, because they just do it. They've always had an ill parent, or their siblings always been poorly. They've always done that. So so that is something that we deal with. They are the unseen, and isolation with lockdown has just magnified that. I mean, one thing we've been working on is a laptop campaign, because a lot of our young carers, we're at the end of January, beginning of February, and a lot of our young carers didn't even have access to online classes because they didn't have the technology. So we launched a laptop campaign in early January, and we've managed to get laptops out there. But that's also, it's not necessarily all about the schoolwork they do on there. It's also about the social aspect, that they can keep in contact with their friends. Because whether we like it or not, with screen time and everything, that's the way they're able to keep in contact with their social network and their peers. So that's something.
Within your work, do you have any specific ways that you monitor the mental health of the young people that you're aware of?
We do. We are obviously in touch with them, and we're talking to them and the families as well. It's really important to get feedback, and it's becoming increasingly difficult for families that may have mental health issues with the parents, and the young carers are taking that on board as well. There's the additional worry, because their class is vulnerable. They can go to school if they haven't got a laptop at home, but a lot of them do not want to go to school because their parent or sibling is shielding, and they're worried about the virus being passed on that way. So we constantly try and monitor our young carers' mental health. We use social media. We try and encourage them to do mental health activities. We've got mental health first aid courses that they can do. So we're really aware of it.
And Matt, is that something that you have an issue with, trying to identify or monitor young people's mental well-being when they're at school?
I think we kind of track and make a record now. Obviously, we have a cozy corner in school, so like a space dome, blacked out zone, meditation room, etc. So we kind of now have a log that every time a child goes in or needs like a timeout to go and have, a bit of chill time, because obviously the staff in school have all been mental health trained, but obviously using Oxfordshire Youth, and we did CBT training with obviously the CAM service. Any member of staff can approach that child, and different children, as you know, relate to different adults. And we have a tracking system now where it gets uploaded, like almost paperless trail now. We use a service called CPOMS, which is obviously where we kind of track, the discussion had, if it's, child protection, etc., anything like that, or a need for concern. And then we kind of keep a record of if it's that same problem that's reoccurring, then obviously that's a matter obviously we need to address. If it's someone saying they can't sleep at night, if it's like a pattern of 3 or 4 times, then there's obviously a reason behind it. So it's kind of using those open-ended questions without obviously, with children prompting the answer or saying they said this, you've got to kind of word it and let them express how they want to. We also have for the younger children, a penguin app, which is where the children are a penguin, and it'll ask you a question and you pick a face of happy, sad, etc. And it'll ask you why you did it, and you just tap buttons. And again, that creates each child's profile. So again, it's kind of almost like a log that you kind of just keep. And hopefully we were in the process of kind of being able to track my year 6s that are now gone up to year 7 in secondary school. Obviously, we're keeping good contact with the physical education department to track kind of how they are up there. But obviously that's, taken a bit of a backlash because of COVID, etc. But it would be nice to know how those year 6s are now onto year 7 with the pressures, etc., how they deal and cope with things compared to other children who come from different schools.
Yeah. So I suppose for all of us to think about monitoring that, whether it's children in our own families or children we know as relatives or within our communities, or at schools, or Sabina, as you're working with them in charities, it's finding ways that we might notice and understand and not misinterpret behaviour that could be seen as maybe naughty, but is actually something more than that. And even considering that, as Paul and I have talked about in the past, with adults displaying that sort of behaviour, so that we really try and take as much pressure off families as we can at this really, really difficult time. It's been so nice talking to you all. Thank you very much for coming here. I know it was a long car journey and you got very stuck in the snow. What snow we haven't got anymore. But it's been really interesting to talk to you. And anyone got any last words?
Same again. It's been a pleasure to meet all of you and have a great discussion. I think we could have spoke for hours on this topic between us. You can tell the passion kind of comes from everyone, which is really important, I think.
Yeah, here. It's nice that we're discussing it openly, without just sort of feeling we need to say it because it's topical.
Yeah,
I think that's important. There's real recognition here. Been great to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.